colors. Now it comes in really handy if you have and you make reference to the color wheel that you drew yesterday. All right. And this is when we worked with the complementary colors and when we work with analogous colors and when we talk with some about these other colors, having it arranged actually in a wheel and having those triangular equilateral triangles in there is going to be kind of important. All right. So analogous colors, these are 3 to 4 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So if you look at your color wheel, you'll find in my 2 examples, and you don't have to color in the exact 2 examples I did, but you'll find that in these 2 examples, red, orange, red, red, violet, those 3 colors are right next to each other on the color wheel. Same thing with my other example of blue, blue, green, green, and yellow, green. They are right next to each other on the color wheel. Now, while you're coloring those things in and you're writing down the definition of analogous colors, I want to speak a little bit to the fact that, again, when you have those 12 colors, those are not the only colors that there are. If you imagine looking at just between red, orange, and red, violet, we could mix lots of variations in between those 2 colors. So this analogous color scheme is based on those 3 colors or those 4 colors, but it can include everything every variation of that you could get in between there as well. When you mix up a red orange, you might have a red orange that looks a little bit more orange than another version of red orange, because there's lots of different amounts of those colors that you could create in between there and still call it red orange. Okay, so take just a moment, write down the definition, make yourself some boxes, start filling in what some of those colors are going to look like. All right, and then we will continue on with our next color scheme. Now, what I'd like you to do at the very least, if you haven't colored those boxes in yet, at least label underneath them what colors they're going to be. And I will give you some time at the end of class to actually fill those colors in. Okay? All right. Our next color scheme is split complementary, right? Now, split complementary, you definitely want to look at your color wheel, okay? And I'm going to switch my screen over here in just a minute and show you this. But for split complementary, you're going to choose one color on the color wheel as your base color. And that is kind of indicated in my diagrams here, right? So I'm going to choose a base color. And in the example I've already colored in, I chose red as my base color. Then I'm going to use the 2 colors, one on each side of the base color's complement. So if you look at the example that's colored in, I chose red as my base. The complement of red is green. So you see an arrow, double-ended arrow running between the red and the word green. But what I'm looking at is for my other two colors in this color scheme, I'm looking for the colors that are left and right of green. So left and right of green, I have yellow green and I have blue green. So my split complementary color scheme would be red, yellow green, and blue green. Okay, so I'm going to show you this, point it out a little bit better on one of those color wheels that we drew yesterday. What I would like for you to do is you can copy my one, and then I want you to create two split complementary color schemes on your own. Okay, so you should have a total of 3 in your notes. Copying the one that I did, the one that I did showed you a base color of red, complement being green, but the 3 colors total that make up the split complementary color scheme are red, yellow green, and blue green. So those are the only colors that I actually gave an example with color, right? So then you need to draw 2 more. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Now, at a very minimum, because I am going to give you some time to actually go back and color all this in when we get finished, label what your color choices are so that you can go back and fill in the colors. Okay. Okay, so like I said, at least have written out, even if you haven't colored it yet, at least have written out the colors and planned out what those 2 color schemes, those 2 split complementary color schemes are that you're coming up with on your own. And when we finish with our notes, I'm going to let you go back and add color to it. Okay. So our next set of color schemes. These are warm colors and cool colors. Right. So with warm colors and cool colors, and you don't have to draw in the example that I have there. I just put it up there so that you can kind of see the range that I'm describing here. So warm colors are going to be yellows, oranges, and reds. And I do want you to write that part down. Yellows, oranges, and reds. The range of colors from yellow to red violet is also another way that people think of it. or things that would be hot or warm. So consider when you draw sun, what's the first color you think of when you're going to color in the color of the sun? Yellow, right? The sun is thought of to be hot. Okay, so yellow would be yellow. Some people said orange earlier. So yellow or orange, those are colors we think of as being warm. It's associated with something that is actually warm. We learn that at a very early age. Okay, cool colors: blues, greens, violets. Range of colors from violet to yellow green. Things that would be cool or cold. So think about that temperature. It's a really hot Texas day in the summer and you jump into the pool. Is that water cool? Yeah, it is. Now it eventually feels warmer, but when you first jump in that cool water, it can almost feel like it's too cold. All right. What color do we generally think of when we want to color water? Blue. Okay, it's associated with being a cool color. All right. Now, the one thing I do want to kind of point out, when we talk about that range of colors, they give you that range of colors for warm colors. They give you that range of colors for cool colors. They're essentially dividing the color wheel in half. Half of them fall into the warm color range. Half of them fall into the cool color range. And that's what you see on this scale right here. Okay. One of them ranges from yellow to red violet. And the other one is the range from violet to yellow green. Okay, so that's the idea of the warm colors and the cool colors. And again, on this one, I'm just looking for you to write down the text there. You don't actually have to draw an example. I just wanted to visually show you that. All right, next. This is simply a vocabulary word. Hue, H-U-E. It is another word that means color. So a lot of times you will hear this word used in place of saying color. Somebody will say, well, what hue is that? All right. And so they're just asking, what color is that? So that is a vocabulary word that I want you to be familiar with. Take a minute and write that into your notes. All right, and now we're going to talk about tints and shades. Now, tints and shades, they get kind of tricky here because when you think about tinted windows, what color are you thinking about? Black. But in art, tint does not mean adding black. Yes, when you're going outside and you're thinking about, my windows, they're letting in too much light, I need to tint them. But in art, tint means that you have taken a hue, a color, and you have mixed it with white. Think about tints as being the pastel kind of colors. They're the lighter colors. And what happens when you tint something is that you are changing the intensity of it. All right. So those pastel colors, when you think of that bright, vibrant, say red, and you mix it with white, what color are you getting? You're getting a pink. Okay. But that pink is less intense. It is not nearly as bright and vibrant as the original red is. okay? Unless you move into like neon type colors, but that's something totally different, okay? That wouldn't involve mixing red and white, all right? You mix some other things to get those really bright neon colors. Okay, so when you're mixing any color, any hue with a white, you're making it less intense and you're making it lighter. So we have an example here. I used orange. It's a little hard to tell that that actually made it lighter. You can see greater changes probably if I'd gone over that again or used a different color that was a little bit darker to really show you the change. Okay, now shades are what you add. You take a hue or color and you're mixing it with black. So a lot of times when you think about your shading in an area, you think of the shadows, you're making it darker, all right? So shade is when you add black. Again, adding black is something that is changing the intensity of something. It's making it darker, a little bit more dull. It's not nearly as bright as it would have been when you add black to it, okay? Now, in both of these examples, to make a tint and to make a shade, you're talking about starting with the original color and adding white, or starting with the original color and adding black. And that is going to be an important thing to keep in mind when you practice your mixing of colors next week. All right. So with black, in my example here with orange, what you ended up with was kind of a brown color. So again, one of those neutral colors, it's less intense. All right, so in your notes, what I will be looking for is that you've written down the definition and you've given me a little example like what I have put up here in the picture. All right, now this is our last one, and then you're going to have the rest of the class period to fill it in and make sure that you have all of your notes finished. And this is dealing with triadic colors. All right, and this is where in just a minute I'm going to flip it back to our color wheel that we were looking at, and your equilateral triangle comes into play. So triadic colors are a set of colors that form an equilateral triangle on the 12 color wheel. All right, again, we have lots of colors in between, but in order to form these color schemes, we're using a 12 color wheel as our reference. So when you drew out that color wheel yesterday, we drew a triangle between the red, the yellow, and the blue, an equilateral triangle that was formed between the three primary colors. So the primary colors themselves are a color scheme, but they also fall into the category of being a triadic color scheme. Same thing with our secondary colors. We also do a triangle between our secondary colors. It was an equilateral triangle. There's equal space between each of those colors, or equal number of colors between each of those three colors. All right. Now, the thing about the triadic color scheme is that if you did a primary color scheme, you probably wouldn't call it a triadic color scheme. You would call it a primary color scheme because that makes more sense. It's a little bit more specific to those three colors. Same thing with your secondary colors. It is a triadic color scheme, but if you were talking about what it was, you would most likely reference it to be a secondary color scheme, because people that understand what the primary colors are and the secondary colors are, they're going to immediately associate the three colors that go with that name because it's more specific. So the triadic colors really come into play when you're trying to create a color scheme, but you're using the intermediate colors. So the third example here is the color scheme you would get when you shift that equilateral triangle just a little bit, one set of colors, and you get a color scheme using intermediate colors. They still have the same number of colors in between them. And one example would be yellow, orange, red, violet, and blue, green. how many other color schemes would we have, triadic color schemes would we have left? Anybody want to take a guess? What was that? One, exactly right. We have one other set of colors left that we haven't used here, all right? And that's the end of the notes here. Now, while you're coloring this in, I want to emphasize something about how these colors work. When you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart and you want to paint a new color in your bedroom, they have way more than 12 colors. The way they're getting those other colors is by creating tints and shades, or mixing the complements in with it, or mixing other variety. They're getting those in between colors that you would get on there, and mixing the white or the black or the complement in there. So by experimenting with all of this, they're able to create every single one of those colors simply with red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And if you ever watch them actually mix the colors, if you see them drip it into the can of what's generally white paint, you'll see that what's coming out of there is, starting with the white paint, it'll either be yellow, red, blue, or black that they stick in there. Some predetermined amount to mix that specific color that you've chosen. Okay? All right, so your job right now, take some time, finish giving me a colored example for each one of these color schemes, and then I'm going to be having you actually take a picture of your finished notes and turn them into me on Schoology. Okay, so you have the rest of the class period to work on finishing up those colors. If you want to take a picture of my notes to have as reference to do your own set of notes, you may certainly do that.